Have
You
you ever
think too
been in a
much.
conversation where someone looks at you and says, you think too much? Or maybe they've called you intense for asking one too many questions. Perhaps you've caught yourself having a full conversation with, well, yourself, and immediately wondered if you're losing it. Here's the thing. What looks strange to others is actually your brain's way of making smarter decisions. I'm not here to tell you you're broken. I'm here to tell you that your mind works differently, and that's not a flaw, it's a feature. Today, we're breaking down 7 weird habits that actually signal higher intelligence, backed by psychology, neuroscience, and a whole lot of research. If you've ever felt like the odd one out because of how you think, this video is your permission slip to stop apologizing for it. Let's dive in. Habit number 1, the solo talker. Let's start with the big one, talking to yourself. Picture this. You're walking through the grocery store, muttering under your breath, okay, I need eggs, but do I need the dozen or the 18? Wait, am I out of butter? Yeah, I'm definitely out of butter. Then you look up and realize someone's staring at you like you've grown a second head. But here's what science says. You're not crazy. You're cognitively efficient. A study published in the National Institutes of Health found that self-talk is directly linked to improved reasoning, problem solving, and executive function. When you speak your thoughts out loud, you're not just thinking, you're translating abstract ideas into structured language, which helps your brain process information faster and with more clarity. Stanford research showed that people who engage in self-talk perform better on tasks requiring concentration and visual processing. It's called cognitive priming. Your brain is literally directing its own attention by hearing what it's thinking. So the next time someone side-eyes you for narrating your life, just know you're not talking to yourself because you're lonely, you're doing it because your brain demands verbal structure to think better. That's not weird, that's smart. Habit number 2, logical overthinking. Now, let's talk about overthinking, but not the anxious kind. Let's talk about logical overthinking. There's a difference. Anxiety makes you spiral. What if I fail? What if they hate me? What if everything goes wrong? That's fear-based rumination. But logical overthinking? That's when you analyze a situation from every conceivable angle because your brain needs to map out all possible outcomes before it can commit to a decision. You're not spiraling, you're strategizing. Research from Healing the Inner Chaos explains that this type of thinking mirrors higher cognitive processing, where the mind engages in deeper analysis and spends more time weighing variables. Here's the catch. It can feel exhausting. You might analyze a simple decision, like which restaurant to choose, and suddenly you're considering reviews, drive time, menu variety, cost per person, and whether your friend secretly hates Thai food. But that exhaustion, that's the cost of seeing layers that most people miss. Your brain isn't malfunctioning, it's just operating at a resolution most people don't experience. The key is recognizing when you're overthinking productively and when you're stuck in analysis paralysis. Balance is the goal, but don't mistake your depth for dysfunction. Habit number 3, the solitary walker. Let's shift gears. Do you ever just walk? Not for exercise, not to get somewhere, just to think. Maybe you walk the same loop around your neighborhood. Maybe you pace your room. Maybe you disappear into nature for hours without your phone. And people think you're antisocial, but you're not avoiding people, you're entering a deeper thinking state. Stanford University conducted a study that found walking increases creative output by 60% compared to sitting. Stanford News. When you walk, your brain shifts into what's called the default mode network, the mental state responsible for problem solving, introspection, and creative insight. Walking doesn't just move your body, it activates your brain's imagination engine. Blood flow increases, oxygen floods your neurons. Ideas that were tangled suddenly untangle themselves. And the best part, you don't even need to walk outside. The study found that even walking on a treadmill in a bland room still boosted creativity. APA Journal. It's the movement itself that matters. So if you're the person who disappears on a walk to clear your head, you're not running away from life, you're stepping into your brain's creative workshop. That's not isolation, that's innovation. Habit number 4, selective organization. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room, your messy desk. Your workspace looks like a tornado hit it. Papers everywhere, coffee mugs from 3 days ago, post-it notes covering every surface. But your digital files? Perfectly organized, color-coded, alphabetized, every document exactly where it should be. What gives? Here's the truth. High IQ minds don't organize everything equally. They put energy into what matters and ignore what doesn't. A study published in Sage journals found that people with higher intelligence often maintain chaotic physical environments, not because they're lazy, but because their mental energy is allocated to cognitive tasks, not aesthetic order. A University of Minnesota study showed that messy workspaces are often associated with greater creativity and idea generation. Inc. Your desk might be chaos, but your mind isn't. You know exactly where that one important paper is buried. You've created a system that works for you, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. It's called selective organization, and it's a hallmark of mental efficiency. You're not messy, you're strategically chaotic, and there's a big difference. Habit number 5. Short bursts of deep obsession. Let me paint a picture. It's 2 a.m. You started researching something random, say the history of lighthouses, and now, 4 hours later, you know more about maritime navigation than most sailors. Why? Because something in that topic lit up your brain like a Christmas tree. This is what I call short bursts of deep obsession. You don't just learn things, you devour them. You go down rabbit holes that have no practical value, but you can't stop because your brain is firing on all cylinders. Psychologically, this is a sign of a strong curiosity system. Learning triggers dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. For you, acquiring knowledge isn't just interesting, it's addictive in the best way. This habit is often misunderstood as lack of focus because you don't stick with one thing forever. But that's not the point. You're not building expertise, you're feeding your brain's hunger for novelty and complexity. This is the same trait that drives polymaths, inventors, and innovators. They don't just learn one thing deeply, they learn many things just deep enough to make unexpected connections. So if your browser history looks like a chaotic mix of philosophy, quantum physics, baking techniques, and obscure historical events, you're not scattered, you're intellectually omnivorous, and that's a rare gift. Habit number 6, the small talk allergy. Let's talk about small talk. Or rather, let's talk about why you can't stand it. You're at a party. Someone approaches you with, "So, how about this weather?" And internally, you're screaming. Not because you're rude, but because your brain is starving for substance, and this conversation is offering crumbs. Here's what's happening. You don't hate people, you hate surface-level interaction. Research from the American Psychological Association found that people who prefer deep conversations over small talk tend to report greater life satisfaction and connection, APA. But here's the twist. It's not that small talk is bad, it's that your brain craves complexity in a way that chit-chat can't satisfy. You want to talk about ideas, systems, meaning, and the why behind things. You want to understand how people think, not just what they did last weekend. And in group settings, you go quiet, not because you're shy, but because the conversation stays shallow and jumping in feels like a waste of mental energy. This isn't social anxiety, it's intellectual selectivity. You're not antisocial, you're just waiting for the conversation to get interesting. And when it does, you light up like a firework. So if people have ever called you quiet or distant in groups, know this, you're not withholding, you're just conserving your energy for conversations that matter. Habit number 7, intellectual humility, the self-doubt paradox. Here's the paradox. The smarter you are, the more you doubt yourself. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. People with lower competence tend to overestimate their abilities because they don't know what they don't know. But people with higher competence, they're hyper-aware of the vastness of what they don't know, and it makes them doubt themselves. A study published by the American Psychological Association found that intellectual humility, the recognition of the limits of your knowledge, is a defining trait of truly intelligent people, APA record. You second-guess yourself not because you're incompetent, but because you understand how complex the world actually is. You see the nuance, the gray areas, the exceptions to every rule, and that awareness can feel like a weight. Meanwhile, someone with surface-level knowledge speaks with absolute confidence because they genuinely believe they've figured it all out. But here's the gift hidden in your self-doubt. It keeps you learning, it keeps you questioning, it keeps you growing. And that intellectual humility, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. So if you've ever felt like an imposter, even when you're objectively good at something, you're not broken, you're just aware. And that awareness is a sign that your mind is functioning at a level most people will never reach. I want to acknowledge something real. These habits can feel like a burden sometimes. You see things others miss. You feel the weight of every decision. You experience what psychologists call emotional contagion, where you absorb the emotions of the people around you because your brain is so attuned to patterns and subtleties. It's not just intellectual depth, it's emotional depth, and that can be exhausting. You might feel like your mind is moving too fast, or that you're cursed to always see the layers, the complications, the what-ifs. But here's what I need you to hear. Your mind is not a curse. It's a rare gift that just needs balance. You're not too much, you're not too intense, you just think deeper than most. And the world needs people like you, people who see what others overlook. So here's the truth. You're not weird. You're just wired differently. If you recognized yourself in any of these habits, talking to yourself, overthinking logically, walking to think, organizing selectively, diving deep into random topics, avoiding small talk, or doubting yourself despite being capable, then this video was made for you. You're not broken, you're not alone, and you're definitely not too much. Your brain is a gift. It just needs the right environment, the right people, and the right understanding to thrive. So I want to hear from you. Which of these 7 habits do you have? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you want more content that helps you decode your mind and understand why you are the way you are, hit that subscribe button. Because you're not here to fit in. You're here to think deeper, see further, and create meaning in a world that desperately needs it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.